Welcome back to the C Space Studio. I am James Kotecki. We are here at CES 2025, and more importantly, we are here with Travis Howe, Global Vice President, Global Head of New Product Solutions at Samsung. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So people, especially people at CES, I mean, Samsung is a well-known brand. It is a stalwart here at CES. But tell us about your title and kind of what you're up to at Samsung.
So I was brought into Samsung to really think about ad innovation. So when we think about the plethora of devices that we have and how consumers engage with those devices, certainly marketers are interested in figuring out how they can reach those consumers. And as we see consistent acceleration of innovation on ads, my role here is to figure out where are we going to identify the next new trends and develop ad products around those that create a real personal connection between our devices and the people that use them.
Okay, so what are you telling people here at CES 2025 along those lines?
So I think that there's real four themes that we look at when it comes to Samsung ads. It's reach, performance, action, and context. And when we think about those, we always start with reach. Given that we've got the #1 TV brand in the world, we would still recognize that the television is one of the best places to drive brand awareness. But then when we also think about our TVs, we're also thinking about performance. Advertisers are more increasingly looking for full funnel opportunities, not only brand awareness, but how can you use the television as a conversion or transaction mechanism? And then when we think about action, you hear terms around gamification. But when I think about action, it's more about how do you turn brands into interaction or interactivity? And so how do you create a more leaned in experience as it relates to marketing, and then context? I think we always hear marketers talk about the right brand at the right time, but we're also thinking about the measurement or impact it can have when you're delivering an ad in contextually relevant spaces. So those are four of the bigger themes that we're talking about this year at CES.
So let's imagine a scenario in someone's house that incorporates all those things together. So if things go right and you're doing what you want to be doing and they have the right device in their house, what's an example of an experience for a customer where all those four things are really clicking for them?
I think it happens across the customer journey, but if we use our televisions as an example, certainly from the moment they turn on their television, we want to be delivering them advertising messages that are relevant for them. And so when they turn on their television, that could start with content discovery, right? And creating brand awareness around the content that we think they want to watch. But as they go through their user journey on our devices, for example, going into content, we want to continue that in there. And as we mentioned on one of our core themes, that's more than just brand awareness. We want to make sure that we are giving them the mechanism to, one, lean into some of those ad experiences and create a more interactive experience with those brands. And then lastly, when we think about full funnel, giving them the opportunity to figure out where they can conduct that transaction on that. And so it's following them on their entire user journey, whether it exists on their television or what that relationship looks to mobile phones. And if you take it even one step further, how do we continue that customer journey when it lives on their home appliances, those appliances that are connected to the web?
Home appliances, which may also have screens and kind of converging all of this together.
Right, refrigerators being a great example.
Exactly. And so I imagine that was it context? I mean, I imagine that goes along with relevance, right? So the idea of when it's, or not feeling like it's a distraction or a burden to have to click off something and shop the thing that I want to get, but that it's kind of more seamlessly woven into the experience. I feel like I'm not defining this properly, but I'm sure you think about this in very precise terms.
Right, I think that's a part of context, right? I think that if we look at the evolution of advertising, one of the things that digital introduced is the ability to find the exact right consumer at the exact right time and deliver them the right ad. But at times that was independent of the content that ad was showing up on in the ad break, or how that ad was actually being potentially integrated into the content itself. So when we talk about contextual relevance, it all comes down to data. So it's looking at what do we know about that content and how are we putting safeguards around it. One of the things that advertisers want the most is brand safety. And then using that data that we have, in addition to the data that the advertiser has, and bringing those together. Finding that appropriate intersection of you watching your favorite television show, recognizing that there's cooking or a particular car that's being driven in that advertising show, identifying that perhaps you might have an aptitude or an interest in learning more about cars or cooking, and ensuring that we're delivering ads that are not only relevant to that content, but relevant to you as a consumer.
And what are the brands that you're working with expecting you to do with AI today? What are you actually doing? What's actually working? What's happening right now?
So when we think about AI, I think about it in a couple different ways. I look back at last year, and I think, personally, I consider 2024 the year of questions. Consumers were asking themselves, what is AI? How do I use it? And what questions should I ask it?
Yeah.
I personally think that when we look at 2025, I think it's going to be the year of integration. As consumers are becoming more familiar with AI, they're asking themselves, all right, how am I going to integrate it into my everyday life? And at what devices should I be using AI? What I find really interesting about that is it's going to change the relationship between the consumer and the devices they use, and will create a much more personal relationship. So as an example, let's look at the television. Television has historically been known as a passive device. I turn it on, I find my favorite content, and then I lean back. I think with AI, what it's going to do is going to change the relationship with your television and make it more personal. You're going to have the opportunity to use your television to search, as an example. And then when we think about that beyond the consumer and think about the advertiser perspective, the advertiser is going to expect us to use AI to get much more precise on reaching the right consumers in the right context, but more importantly, using AI to deliver a full funnel marketing solution. And so for Samsung in particular, what advertisers are expecting from us is keep doing what you're doing in terms of brand awareness, right? We have the #1 television brand in the world. We're the largest TV brand out there. That works. But what they're also saying is, help us use AI to continue that customer journey throughout the entire funnel. So an example of that is mobile and web conversion. We recognize that the transaction or conversion may not exist on the television. But what advertisers are asking for us is, if our ad is driving a conversion or transaction off the television, tell us where it's occurring. And then identify where that attribution is taking place and do that full funnel measurement all the way back. And so I use the word attribution because the conversion isn't happening on the television. The conversion may happen on someone else's website, but credit should still be given to the ad that has been delivered in the right place, in the right context, to the right consumer. So it's really going beyond just segmenting upper funnel awareness and lower funnel awareness and actually putting it all together in a single ecosystem. And so I think for us, advertisers have an expectation of Samsung because of our footprint and because of the number of devices that we have and our ability to follow those consumers to connect all of those dots across their media campaign to take them from the top of the funnel to lower funnel in a connected, closed ecosystem.
And then what does the impact of generative AI have? What is the impact on the creative side of that, on the ad creative?
So generative AI is going to be really interesting. I think that when I look at it personally, I think its application is largely going to be felt in mid and small size companies. You know, your large enterprise companies, they have large marketing departments, they have agencies, they have creative agencies. But when you look at this mid-market or small market, they may have one person doing marketing. They don't have the funds to look at an agency. And so generative AI allows them to, one, become much more efficient in how they're creating their campaigns. But more importantly, it does take some of the guesswork out of it. AI should be providing or unlocking for mid-market and small market, bringing in the data to say, we're going to help you take the right image with the right headline, with the right call to action, and put it all together and test the viability of that and optimize it over time. And so I think when I look at smaller, medium-sized businesses, generative AI is going to give them not only that creative manpower, but also help give them scale because it'll allow them to do things faster and more efficiently.
Maybe smaller companies, but potentially huge long tail opportunity there in the number of companies and the number of advertisements that could potentially impact. I want to ask you one last question about streaming, because a lot of people are streaming on Samsung devices, obviously, so you have a great perspective on this. The streaming landscape continues to evolve. What are the milestones you see as you look out in 2025 for streaming and its evolution?
I mean, I think we saw a lot of movement in 2024. And I think that when we look at 2025, I really look at it in two ways. One, the democratization of television, and the second one being consolidation. So when we think about democratization of television, what we can expect is that there's still going to be smaller players popping up. In addition to that, in the advertising space, we should expect that there's going to be more self-service tools made available. And then lastly, within the democratization, brand safety is going to still continue to be a very hot topic. And so I think that there's a unique role that OEMs are going to play because all of that lives on our television set. And I think that what you're going to see is OEMs playing a more important role around figuring out what is the available content, what is the technology that you apply to that, and more importantly, how are you protecting brands and making sure that they go in brand safe environments. And then I think it's an easy layup is consolidation. I don't know about you, but when you turn on your television, it feels like you have an infinite...
A lot of choices.
You have a lot of choices, and somewhat it's paralyzing. Like, I have actually no idea what to watch. And so I think that, and in addition to that, profitability is still going to be a huge part of the economic conversation that's being had. So I think that what we can expect to see are really two things under consolidation. Individual streaming services partnering together, and some of those announcements we've heard this week that allow you to get a single point of access to multiple streaming services. And then I think in addition to that, some are going to have to inherently weed themselves out, right? There cannot be a world where you have a streaming service that isn't profitable, and I think that's where FAST plays a very important role. I think for us, we look at TV Plus. TV Plus is our FAST service. It's the #1 app on our televisions, on the #1 television brand. We have 88 million active monthly uniques, and we're seeing 50% year-over-year growth globally. And so I think that consumers are going to be looking for more cost-effective ways to reach their content. I mean, you hear all the time, like, how many subscriptions do you have? Me personally, I have no idea. And so I think that consumers are going to be leaning in more to
If you don't know, what chance do the rest of us have?
Exactly. Well, I don't know about that. But so I think that consumers are going to be looking for either single points of access into content or more free access to that content, obviously supported through advertising.
Well, Travis Howe, you said that 2024 was the year of questions. For me, every year is the year of questions because I get to do this at CES, but really appreciate you answering some of my questions here in the C Space Studio today. Travis Howe of Samsung, thank you for joining us.
I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. This is the C Space Studio. We are at CES 2025. I'm James Kotecki. Stay here because more conversations are just ahead.